Anna Frankish at her home on Route 247. Anna, I hear that Herb is up in the mountains today. That's correct?
That's correct. He's having several days off and enjoying himself with the fellows.
Very good. Anna, I'd like to ask you a few questions about the Rote Frankish connection and Reed Corners back in earlier years. You were the daughter of who?
Grover Rote and Ida Bell.
Grover Rote and Ida Bell. Ida Bell's last name was what?
Watkins.
Watkins. And did you say that her family came from Gorham?
Yes, they lived in Gorham.
Okay. You don't know how they met, do you? Is that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Now your brother Grover had two other brothers, Heber and Jim Rote, did he not?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I believe their father was Charles Rote?
I think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't be sure.
When your dad was growing up, where did they live?
They lived where Heber Rote used to live.
Okay, and who lived there after Heber? Is that up near where Ed and Ken lived?
Yes. Well, it's the same house, not in the the old place.
Now, when you say the old place, is that where Bruce Rote lives now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would be on the west side next to Gene Gage's house.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they had no sisters, did they? It was just the three boys?
Yes, that's all I know of.
Okay. Did your father go to Wilson's Corners School?
I don't know that.
You don't know that?
I suppose he did.
Okay. What siblings, brothers and sisters do you have? Did you or do you have?
I had one sister.
Frances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, was Frances older than you?
Yes, she was a couple years older.
Okay. What month, day, and year were you born?
In January 3rd, 1918.
1918, so that was just a few months before World War I ended. Your first recollections when you were 5, 6 years old, where were you folks living?
We have always lived in this place right here.
So you've always lived 3 houses south of the Reed Corners Church.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea how old this house is?
Well, over 100 years old, we know that.
Did you ever find who built the house?
We don't know. There is a name by the Mason, somebody by the name of Mason used to live here, evidently, because his name is on the door, on the cellar door.
Okay.
And so that has always been here, so we are assuming that he was the first owner of the house.
Now your parents, Grover and Ida Bell, were they Baptists or were they Congregationalists?
They were Baptists.
They were Baptists. What did you and your sister Frances do when you were 5, 6, 7 years of age for entertainment?
I don't remember too much about that. I remember going to school and going to the little schoolhouse over on the crossroad. And
when you were home, did you play with dolls or
yes,
read?
I played with dolls quite a bit. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And we often went cross lots to school, and we would have to jump across the creek.
Okay.
To get there. And we had a lot of good times at the school. Mildred Conklin was the teacher. The first teacher I had was Jimmy Blodgett.
Jim Blodgett.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the country school that you went to was District Number 8, as I remember, over there on the point there,
Yes.
Reed's Corners. Were there 2 rooms in the schoolhouse, but only 1 room was used?
the school room with all the desks was used, and the other room they called the cloak room, and it was big enough so the fellows could play games out there, kind of like basketball, only it wasn't quite that big, but they could play games with basketball and other balls, and so at recess time, that was where they played when the weather was cold.
Do you have any idea why there were two rooms there? At one time, were there a lot more kids?
I don't know about that. I never happened to hear. But also the restrooms were in the other room, and the water fountain was there in that room, and so.
So the restrooms were in the big room?
Mhm.
Okay. Was the outside of the school painted?
Yes. Mhm.
What was it, white or red, or what was it?
Always white as far as I can remember.
Was there more than one door into the main schoolroom?
No, as I recall, no, yes. I mean, the one entrance to the school, there was one door, but there was a door from the cloakroom into the main schoolroom.
Okay.
And I'm not sure whether there was another room that went into the cloakroom. I don't hardly think so.
When you would go into the Reed Corners School, was it off of Depew Road or was it off of what we call County Road 18?
County Road 18, does that go to Gorham?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it was off, the entrance was on that side of the school.
Would there have been parking there for some cars?
Oh yes, there was lots of parking room, and there was what they called a coal shed in the one building on other outside of the school at one side, and so that was always known as the coal, the room where they stored the coal for the year.
Was there any room for a baseball diamond or any place for kids to?
Oh yes, mm-hmm. Now they had a baseball diamond. And
Where was that? Where the trailer is now, or where did they play baseball?
Yes, it was about where the trailer is now, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You said your first teacher was Jim Blodgett.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to school like for first grade when you were about 6?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay, they didn't have kindergarten then, did they?
No, not
Okay.
at all.
Was it an all-day affair for you?
That I don't remember.
Okay. So you would go across lots unless it was real muddy or snowy?
Mm-hmm.
The road out here, 247, was that a gravel road back when you were first going to school?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Even that must have been muddy at times, wasn't
I
it?
don't remember about that.
Don't remember?
But it was.
Now-
But we also played games, and across the road were a very large clump of quince bushes. And the girls, during recess time, Mildred would let us cross the road and play house in those
In a
quince
bush.
bushes. And we had it fixed up like a playhouse in the bushes, and we had lots of good times over there.
And it kept the boys and the girls from fighting probably, didn't it?
Probably.
Now, was that in the little lot next to where Flynn's live now, or where Hazel Wilkinson lived?
No, on the side toward Gorham on County Road 18.
Okay, so it was still on the schoolhouse property?
No, not really.
Was it on Bigham's farm property?
Well, if Bickham's owned it at that time, I would say yes.
Okay, I think they probably did. Now, you would have walked to school with Francis?
Mhm.
Did you then hook up with Dorothy Conklin, or?
No, she generally rode with her mother to school because
Okay.
her mother drove.
So it was you and Francis going to school?
Mhm.
Okay. Was she, how much older was Francis? Was Francis than you?
Well, nearly 3 years.
3 years.
Between
So
2
when
and
you're in
3 years.
first grade, she's in 4th grade.
Yeah,
She was about half through.
yeah.
with that school. Did you miss Frances when she went to school and you were home by yourself and your mother?
I don't remember about that at all.
Okay.
But, I guess we were busy and
Who were some of the kids that you were in school with, like in second and third and fourth grade, besides your sister? Dorothy Conklin?
of course Dorothy, and there was Effie Hall and Doris Bigham. And I remember them especially.
Do you remember some of the boys that would have been there?
Yes, I remember one fella whose name was June Caveney, and he was a great big fellow, and everyone was afraid of him.
Really?
He was good-natured, but also you didn't want to get in his way.
Kind of a gentle giant then, huh? Where did the Caveneys live?
Where Martin Cohn used to live.
Which
where
is-
the Burgesses used to live.
Okay, the next house south of yours, where Martha Burgess used to live. That was the Caveney farm. Did his?
I wouldn't say Caveney, it was the Cohn farm, Martin Cohn.
Okay, so Caveney's worked for Combs?
I don't know whether I thought that he just lived with them.
Oh, okay, okay. Do you know, is the Caveney, is he still alive, do you know?
I have no idea, no.
Okay. Were there any Gages that you were in school with, or Geisels?
Lots of Geisels, yes.
Okay.
Louis Geisel was there the first few years when I was in school. I remember he was there.
Okay, how about his sister Margaret?
Yes, I think she was there too.
Okay, so did you have Jim Blodgett for 1 year or more than 1 year?
Oh, I think 1 year maybe.
1 year? What was done for discipline? What did they do for kids that acted up, whether it was talking or playing pranks?
I don't remember about the punishment. I know we were very cautious and we behaved ourselves quite well. There must have been a reason.
Did it seem strange being in school with great big kids too, or that's just the way it was?
That's just the way it was, and so every class, you know, would, like if you were in the 5th grade or whatever, you'd all march up to the front and sit on one long bench, and the teacher would be directly in front of them, and they got their lessons right there. And so the rest of the school was supposed to be paying attention to their homework.
Was that called a recitation bench?
Well, it probably was.
Was there a blackboard in the school?
Oh yes, there was blackboards and maps. I remember the maps especially.
Did the teacher, when you came in the front door, you could come into the main school room, were there rows of desks then for the children?
Oh yes.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, how many kids would have been there at an average day when you were like in 4th or 5th grade? Are we talking 20 kids?
For like a 4th grade?
No, of the total
Oh,
school.
the total school. I would say so, at least.
And they'd range from 1st grade to 8th grade?
Any? Pardon?
8th grade, would they go up to 8th grade?
Oh yes.
When you got to about 8th grade, would a lot of the kids have quit school by then?
No, I don't think so.
So you'd have about as many 8th graders as you would 1st graders?
Well, I doubt if there would be quite that many, but
Okay.
there were quite a few.
Did kids come in all sorts of different clothing? Did some families have a lot more money than others? Or was everybody about in the same boat?
I guess everybody was about in the same boat.
Back in the mid-20s, was farming paying very well, or was it kind of just getting by around here in Reed's Corners?
Oh, you were getting by.
So you were getting
doing
enough
all
to,
right.
you were getting enough to eat then, and
Until the depression came, and then everybody had to be careful.
when you were second and third grade, what would you have worn to school?
Just cotton dresses, and then in the wintertime, heavier clothing like wool skirts and tops, and always stockings and long black bloomers, and
Is a bloomer like a slip? What's a bloomer?
no, an undergarment, the
Okay.
same as underwear.
Okay.
That- So that was, and also I can remember wearing button shoes to school too.
Okay.
They have a special button hook to button those shoes with.
You still have a pair of those?
Oh, no.
No? Did you, I heard that kids used to take baked potatoes or potatoes to school, keep their hands warm. Did you ever do that?
No, but we did have hot lunches in the wintertime, and different families would bring in a hot dish. And so several days a week we would have a hot dish at noon.
That had to be a treat.
Yes, well, we had an old coal stove in the middle of the school, and so things were kept warm on top of that when somebody did bring food.
What did your mother usually bring when it was her turn?
Had no idea.
What meal did you like the best of the hot meals?
Oh, I guess Spanish rice was a favorite of everybody's.
Spanish rice? Do you remember, or was it so long ago that you can't remember when school started and when it ended, as far as the time of day?
No, I don't remember about that.
Did you have, besides lunch, did you have one or more recesses to go out and blow the steam off?
Well, I know in the morning we always had like a 15-minute recess, and so that was always, the big boys always enjoyed that a lot.
Was it, when you got along, did school go till like the end of May, or do you know when school ended for the
I think it was
year?
about the same as it is now.
Was there some time that the boys would have to take off from school to harvest in the fall?
I don't recall about that.
Okay. Did you have homework
Oh, yes.
that you
we
had to do here at
homework.
home?
Mhm,
Mhm.
yeah. And also I remember another thing, as we were going to school, when we went the other way around, by road, we were always kind of afraid to go by the old evaporator. That was an old building there, and so it looked spooky to us, so we always hurried by
You
there.
kind of ran by?
I don't know if we did, but
Now,
we were
would it be
frightened.
would it be near dark sometimes on your way to school, or was it always
Oh,
daytime?
I think it was always daytime.
Now, the old evaporator, that was between the house on the corner and Tom and Marge Henry's house, is that
Right.
correct? When you were young, was that in operation, or had that closed down?
I think I remember when they had apples there, but that was only for a few years, I guess, because after that I remembered it was deserted, and
You probably were too young to know who owned it, weren't you?
no, we had no idea.
Okay. So you think it was running a little bit when you were young?
I think so.
Okay. So you would walk to school either around the road or cross lots, and you had Mildred Conklin most of your time. What games did you play besides house in the quince bushes?
Well, there's always the usual drop the handkerchief and those little games out in the schoolyard. And well, some of us kind of avoided the rougher games that the bigger boys were playing. And in fact, we were kind of sometimes afraid to go out in the cloakroom at noon when they had, at lunchtime when they had their break and were playing, because the big fellows were playing with the basketball out there, and I guess you felt like you were going to get run over or by the big fellows, and so it was a lot more peaceful to stay right in the schoolroom.
Who was your best girlfriend besides your sister Frances?
Well, of course, Dorothy Spohr and Doris Bigham. Doris Bigham and Effie Hall used to be in our Sunday school class that Mary Mumby taught, and
Okay.
and there was a Martha Pip. She always came to Sunday school, and so that was nice. We always look forward to Sunday and Sunday school.
Tell me about your dad.
Well, he was a very inventive person, and he had he worked at after graduating from Cornell. He went to
He graduated from Cornell.
yes.
Did he really?
Mhm.
That was pretty rare back in those days, wasn't
Well,
it?
it might have been, I don't know. And so then he went to work for Kellogg's cornflake place in Michigan, and he stayed there until his father got Parkinson's disease, and then he came home to take care of him. And after that, he had lots of opportunities to go back to work, but they would often send requests for drawings that he made on his drawing board of different problems that they had at the cornflake factory.
Like with the machines or
So
something?
they would pay him for these drawings that he made, and
Now these were to sell products or problems with the machines
I
or?
have no idea. No.
So your father went to Cornell
Yeah,
and he came back to the farm when his father got
he was a
Parkinson's.
mechanical engineer, and so that was, he liked it in Michigan, his job, as far as that goes.
Now, was he married to your mother then?
No.
This is before that?
Yeah.
Okay. So your father came back, and your farm here, was it, do you remember how many acres it would have been in the 20s?
I think about the same. I think it was about 52 acres.
About 52 acres.
Mhm.
Did you have a lot of orchards back then?
No, no.
No orchards.
No, he planted all the orchards, and so that was,
Do you know when that would have been? How old you would have been when he planted the orchards?
I don't remember the older orchards, but I remember a newer orchard that he planted at the further end, and which we used to have into grain, and he used those fields for a new orchard.
Now, when you say orchard, are we talking apples?
Yes, well, we had a lot of sweet cherries and all the other fruits like damson plums and pears and,
We had plums.
mhm.
Were these orchards west of us toward the lake or south of us? Where were these orchards?
Just west of here.
So behind your house and barns.
Mhm.
Did you, when you were along 10 or so years of age, did you have a couple of cows here?
Oh yes, we always had cows.
What animals did you have besides cows?
2 horses.
2 horses.
Mhm.
Now, were they for a field work or to pull a horse and buggy?
Well, both. I don't remember the horse and buggy too much. I remember going in the sleigh to my grandmother's funeral.
Which
and,
grandmother?
My mother's mother.
A Watkins
Wow.
woman.
Mhm, yeah. And so that, I do remember that, and I remember that there was what they called a buffalo robe in those days, and I remember they had me all covered up with that in the bottom of the sleigh.
Now, did you go because the roads were pretty impassable?
I
For
don't know whether we even had a car at that time.
Do you remember about when your father would have gotten your first car? Would it have been in the mid-20s or earlier?
Oh, probably.
Was it a Model T or a Model A?
I think it was a Chevrolet.
Chevrolet?
Mhm.
Early Chevy?
Mhm.
On your farm here, the main source of income to buy stuff with hard cash, would that have been grain? Or where did you get most of your money then?
I suppose it was from grain. Mhm.
Would your dad have taken grain to Canandaigua or Rushville?
That I don't know. Sometimes wherever he got the best price.
Okay.
Sometimes to Rushville, and sometimes to Canandaigua. Mhm.
Now, would that early on have been with horse and wagon?
Early on, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Did he have a truck then later?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
That was. And I remember when he used to take the grain to the Fitches in Rushville quite often. They bought and sold grain down there.
Now would that have been back in
Then
horse?
later on, I would say.
Okay, with a truck?
Mhm.
Did he have his own truck or did he have a truck with somebody else that they bought?
No, he had a truck of his own. And
Okay.
I think it was maybe with a car that had been made over into a truck that he
Okay.
had made over himself.
Did he work by himself here on the farm or did he have a hired man or?
Some of the time we had a hired man, Alfred Shaw from Reed Corners. He worked for us a lot.
Would Alfred Shaw been related to Ed Shaw?
Yes. I don't know what relation, but I know they were relatives.
Okay. You said you mentioned earlier about the Baptist church. The Rhodes for Baptist.
Mhm.
Back in the late 20s and 30s, can you remember Reverend Hoover or Esperson or
Yes, I
Fordham?
remember the Esperson.
Who's the first
Fordham.
minister you remember when you were a little girl?
Well, I think probably the Espersons.
Espersons?
Mhm.
Where did they live in the parsonage?
Yes. Mhm.
Do you remember the parsonage not being owned by the church? Was it ever just a private residence, do you know?
I just assumed that the church owned it, but I.
But the Espersons lived there.
Mhm.
Okay. What do you remember about the Espersons? Was there a wife and a couple kids or a child or no
Yes,
child?
they had two children that I know of, possibly another one. And of course I remember one. He was a very nice looking fellow. And I think when he was about 14, we girls thought that he was pretty nice.
Would he have gone to school at Reed's Corners then?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Who do you remember after Esperson?
Well,
Who was the big tall fellow?
Forrest Fordham. of
Forrest
course.
Fordham?
We always were close friends with them.
Was he after Esperson, you think?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Did he live in the parsonage?
Yes.
And did he have a family?
Yes, they had a couple boys, but I'm not sure about what. Maybe that was after they had left Reed Corners.
Okay. Were most of the ministers that you had at the Baptist church divinity students from Rochester?
Yes, almost entirely.
Is that because it was a small, not very affluent church and you couldn't afford a full-time minister?
I'm sure that was the reason.
I remember the name Profio. Was that before this time?
Yes,
Reverend?
yes, I think that was before the Espersons and like that when they were there.
Okay. Maybe Profio married my grandparents.
Could be.
I remember that name. Do you remember who was after Fordham?
Huh.
There was a Tom Witt,
Oh,
or Chet Witt.
Chet was.
Do you remember when he was?
Yes, I remember, and I remember his wife Mary would always bring the kids to church in a cart.
A cart,
A cart.
like a little,
She would
little
walk
wagon?
over it like a wagon, a little wagon, yeah. Oh, that was.
Now, he
that
was
interesting.
He was a sickly fellow, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He wasn't well at all. And I think they're in Rushville now, where they have been for many years.
One of the wits is, yes.
One of the woods, one
Yeah,
of the
Tom.
children probably. Mhm.
Yeah. Your church service, do you remember who was after Wits? Are we still quite a ways from Jack Tachyaniki?
Yes,
Or are we up around there?
yes, I think probably in that area. Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
they were a nice couple. We would go to conventions with them sometimes, something
Now-
like that.
Tachyanikis, were they here during or shortly after World War II?
That I couldn't say.
Did you ever, I hear he was quite popular, Jack Tachyaniki. Did he ever have any people that were down on him because he was of Japanese ancestry? Did you ever hear anybody complain?
I never heard anybody complain.
Well, good.
Not at all. Mhm.
I guess there was a Reverend Ross in there too, wasn't there?
Oh, yes, Harriet and Ralph Ross, they're now have passed away. But, yes, they were very friendly people, and
Of the ministers we've mentioned, or their wives, are there any still living other than Tachyaniki that we've talked about just now?
I think Ralph and Harriet have passed on.
Your Sunday service, our church service now is an hour. Was the old Baptist service longer than that?
That I don't recall, no. But we always had our Sunday school class always met in the corner of the church, like as the entrance way almost. And as you came in there was a seat. Everybody, our Sunday school class always met because there was one pew that was against the back wall there. And yet it wasn't quite in with the church pews.
Okay.
And so we always met there, and Mary was our Sunday school teacher.
Now you say Mary Mumby
Mary
then.
Mumby.
I remember you were my Sunday school teacher, and I feel guilty how much trouble some of us were, and I'd like to apologize for that.
Oh,
I'm
goodness.
glad that the green kids and the other kids are a lot nicer to me than we were to you.
Well, I don't remember about that.
Well, we,
I do remember one boy who was always, he just liked to be lively, and if there was a crayon on the table or a pencil or anything, this young boy would throw it off on the floor. He'd push it off on the floor every time, and kind of keep the other children's interest
Away from the lesson.
captivated by his little antics.
Yeah. So you say my grandmother taught your Sunday school lessons. Back then, was it mostly reading out of the Bible and talking, or was there?
Oh, we
Disc-
had quarterlies. We had
Oh, you
Sunday
did?
school quarterlies. Mhm,
Okay. So each week had a different lesson.
mhm.
Was Sunday school before or after church?
Oh, after church. Mhm.
So was church like at 10 o'clock, or do you not know?
I really don't
Okay.
remember. It was so long ago.
Did
Mhm.
Sunday school last about the same length of time that church did?
I have no idea about that either. I remember they had a choir loft and a choir there every Sunday, and Marion Rowe was the organist. I remember that.
Was Jim Rote musical in church, or was that before Marion Rote?
I don't remember too much about Uncle Jim, but people were very faithful to come to the Sunday night service in the sessions room. It was held once in a while, a special occasion, we would, it would be held in the church part, which of course that would involve, fastening all the gas lights up on the wall and making sure there was bottled gas or whatever they ran by. And so it was quite a job. So unless it was a special occasion, we didn't generally meet in the sanctuary on Sunday nights. We met in the back room, sessions room, and there was an organ, and we had our hymn sings. And
so there were 2 organs in that church?
mhm.
One in the sanctuary and one in the sessions room?
Mhm.
I didn't know that. Was there a piano in that church?
That I don't know.
So the time that you were attending, was there anybody, an organist besides Mary Ann Rowe?
I suppose so, but I just don't recall. I just remember Marion.
If Mary Mumby has you kids in the Sunday school, just inside the door, are there other Sunday school classes in the other part of the church?
Oh yes, there are different groups and different sections of the sanctuary.
Of the sanctuary.
Mhm.
What you're talking about with the sessions room, was that the part of the building that was added to Hovey's barn?
I really don't know about that.
Okay, what was the sessions room?
Well, it was a large room in the back of it's separate from the sanctuary. And then to one side of it was the kitchen where they prepared all their annual meeting dinners and any special occasions like that. And also there were steps from the kitchen that led up to the baptistry in the sanctuary. And so it was always a very, it seemed like a close group, like I always felt as though it was. And I remember Uncle Emery McGaffey, he always came, and Uncle Jim, and so many of the older people would come, and oh, how they could sing, they could really.
What was the service? Did you have a service every Sunday night?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Well, I don't know if they didn't really call it a sermon, but it was like somebody gave an inspirational talk.
Was it the minister or somebody else?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I
Did they-
assume that it was.
Did they get pretty good attendance? The Sunday
yes.
night
Mhm,
service?
mhm. Just about the same ones every Sunday night.
Huh. Did the church have a custodian that kept the fires going?
Oh, sure. Mhm. They
What-
took turns being custodian to keep the fires going. And
Was there wood stoves or coal
yes,
stoves?
wood stoves.
Wood
Mhm.
stoves.
And in I don't know whether they were often coal stoves too, but I think sometimes that maybe wood was more practical because they just needed the heat for a short time rather than
Yes.
overnight.
Was there running water at the Baptist church?
I never recall any running water.
Okay. But were there sinks there?
Yes, there was a sink. Mhm.
And that was to prepare the meal for
Oh, yes.
annual
Mhm.
meeting? Annual meeting, you say?
And there were many older people came to that. I remember Cora Chapman and her husband named Munson. And Cora was a good cook, and she always would bring some good things to eat at every meeting.
Where did they live?
Down where June Ellis,
On Yahtzee Road?
no, right down here.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, down across from Dole's,
Yes. Mhm.
across from where Don Dole lived. Okay, that was Chapman?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about James Rowe, my great-grandfather.
Well, Uncle Jim was a great storyteller. He had the best stories you ever heard.
Stories that were entertaining or
Oh,
stories
very
that,
entertaining. Mhm.
that he'd make up or that he'd hear someplace?
No, I think they really happened. He used to tell about, there evidently was a school, down near Rushville on the same road. I always assumed that it was.
This
where
road?
Yes.
Yes.
I always assumed that it was about where that, pet establishment is.
That's exactly true.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I can remember him telling about somebody would stuff some starlings down the chimney, and the starlings would go across the stovepipe down into the fire occasionally.
He taught there, I guess.
Yes.
I think he taught your dad. I know he taught at least one of his brothers
Yeah, probably.
in that school.
Mhm.
He was a religious fellow, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
And he I think was kind of musical too, wasn't he?
Yes, I think he was. I don't remember so much about that, but
Now he lived
I
up.
remember him mainly. It's wonderful stories that he used to tell.
He lived up opposite where Gordon Rote lived, didn't he? Up there on 247
Mhm.
near Van Ripers.
Mhm.
Yeah. And he had orchards too, didn't he?
I don't remember too much about that.
Okay.
I remember he had cattle. I remember their barn burned and.
When did, oh really?
Mhm.
Was that a barn before they built that big barn?
I don't recall that
Do
either.
you remember what started the fire?
No, I don't know.
Huh. Now his wife Effie, did you remember her very well?
Well, I remember Aunt Effie was great for memorizing poems.
Poems?
And she had lots of poems that she could recite to you. Every time you had her to your home, she would always have a few poems she could recite, which were very interesting. Mhm.
Now, long later in life, she developed a nervous condition, or she had some emotional problems, didn't she? Effie?
I don't recall.
I guess she was kind of hard to get along with near the end.
Oh,
That's what I was told. But so did you have Wednesday night prayer meetings too?
that I don't recall.
Okay. Were you too young for Christian Endeavor, or would you have been one of the younger?
No, we went to Christian Endeavor.
Hey, tell me about Christian Endeavor.
Well, I don't remember too much about that. I do remember that we met and we had a little pamphlet each one had, and each person's name was in this pamphlet as to which Sunday they were in charge of devotions for that particular Sunday night, and then they would have a party occasionally, so it was quite interesting.
This was at the church.
Mhm.
Now, Christian Endeavor, on an average, what night of the week did they meet?
A Sunday night.
Sunday?
Mhm.
Was this in addition to the Sunday night service?
Oh, this I don't remember about, but I do believe that they, I just remember having the Sunday night sessions like when we had moved over to the Congregational Church like. And I remember those sessions were mostly over there.
When you
And
say
I don't remember any particular Sunday night service there at all, only the young people.
okay, I'm confused. Now, the Sunday night services were at the Baptist church,
Yes.
and where was Christian Endeavor?
Well, that was later on. They had Christian Endeavor, I think, in the Baptist church too, and Sunday nights. But I remember it mostly it was when it was at the Congregational Church.
Okay. Now, roughly when would have been the time that the two churches first got together to share services? When would that have been? The Congregational and the Baptist churches.
I really couldn't say for sure.
Is it as late as the 40s, or was it earlier than that?
I imagine it was earlier than that, but they were, the Baptists, I thought, did a good thing in resolving their, what to do with their church, rather than to have it go to some other cause. They tore it down and moved the pieces to other places that needed stained glass windows and whatever could be used at another church. Often that was taken from the old Baptist church. So then they resolved that it was going to be 3 months at the, before that it was 3 months at the Baptist church and 3 months at the Congregational church.
Okay, so in
Because
both,
they couldn't afford a pastor for each church. So they shared.
so do you remember within a few years of when they first got together and for shared services?
I have no recollection of
Okay,
that.
so it could have been in the 30s or it could have been in the early 40s.
Yes.
Okay, so they'd meet for 3 months at one place and then 3 months at the other. About that time, did the Congregationalists have about the same number of congregation, or was it higher or lower? Which group had more people?
It's the same people came to each, to the either Baptist or Congregational church. It's the same people every Sunday. You couldn't say that one had more than the other because we were like all one.
Okay,
And,
but before you merged, which group was a little bit bigger? Had more people?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't think there was too much difference.
About the same? I would expect it would have been. Was it painful to make the decision to tear the Baptist church down?
Oh, yes, I think it was.
Tell me about that.
All I recall is that they decided that rather than have it turn into a beer joint or something like that they didn't think was very Christian, they had rather see the church being torn down and taken away entirely, rather than to have it turn into something that wasn't of the best reputation.
So they were concerned that it would detract from the original cause. Did your dad help tear down the church, or did Herb by this time, or?
No, I don't recall. I don't recall my father working on. I'd rather think that they hired somebody to
Come in and
tear
do
it
it?
down, but I couldn't be positive about that one.
Okay, I got a couple of real small pictures from Ed Rowe. Do you have any pictures anywhere of the church?
No, I haven't.
Okay, sometime I'll have to show those to you.
No.
Inside and outside, little tiny pictures he took. But I imagine that was difficult, seeing that happen.
Oh, it was, especially for my father. We were kids, at the time, and it really didn't make all that much difference to us. But I think to the older people, it did make it was a hard change to make.
Did you have church picnics at the Baptist church
Oh, yes.
before you merged? Was that in front or out in back?
Oh,
Where did you have your picnics?
I don't remember too much where they set up the tables,
Okay.
whether inside or outside.
I have seen a picture of a picnic outside, and it looked like it was probably right in front. Back in those early days, there probably wasn't a lot of traffic going from Reed's Corners to Gorham, was there? Not like today?
Not like today, no. But I do, we were married in the old Baptist church.
Oh, were you?
I remember that, Herb and I, George and Francis.
Were George and Francis married earlier or the same time?
Earlier.
Earlier? Okay. What month and year were you and Herb married?
We were married in 41.
41. Okay, so the church was obviously still there in 41.
Yeah.
Okay, was it just Was it in the late 40s they tore it down or the mid 40s?
I would say mid-40s.
The war was still going
I
on?
wouldn't dare say, I
Okay.
don't know.
Who married you?
Forrest Fordham,
Forrest Fordham.
I believe that.
So he was there in
No,
41?
wait a minute. I think it was Bob Bell.
Bell?
I almost think it was Bob Bell.
Okay. What, was your mother in the Women's Christian Temperance?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I just remember that Aunt Ree McGaffey was head of it pretty much, and it was they were fairly active.
Did they meet at houses or what did they do?
I don't remember whether they met in houses or whether they met at the church.
Did Emery McGaffey live down near where the Raymonds live now?
No, they lived where the Blakesleys live now, you know. Always lived there.
Where Bob and Pauline Blakesley?
Mhm.
Okay,
They always lived there.
all right. So,
He got an overland car, and I remember that was quite an event in Ree Corners when he got a car by the name of Overland. Evidently that was a nice car at that time.
how did he live? Did he have a farm or?
Well, he raised chickens and sold them. I know he did that, but I never remember him having a job outside of earning things from, you know, earning money from selling his chickens and
Okay.
eggs and like that.
I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. There was never a post office in Reed Corners when you were a young girl,
No,
were you?
mm-mm.
Okay, that was a rural route out of Canandaigua.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you remember what you thought when you got electricity?
Well, it didn't throw us a bit, because we had electricity. My father was very inventive, and we had our own system in the house. And that was quite interesting because I think we were, of course, the first ones to have electricity. And a beautiful lamp I remember we had with the little dangly beading around the edge of the lamp, and oh, we just thought that lamp was wonderful.
How did he generate the electricity? Some
He
sort
had
of gasoline
a
engine?
motor out to the barns, and he also had another motor in the woodshed. And I think the one from the barn had to do quite a bit with the electricity. Downstairs there were all these tanks of about so high, maybe 20 or 30 of them, and they were filled with some kind of liquid, and it would bubble up and like that. And how come that had something to do with the electricity? I don't know, but it did. It had something to do with the.
Now you had electricity for lights, what else did you have electricity for? Did you have a ice box or did you have an electric refrigerator?
No, we waited until electricity came before we got a refrigerator.
Okay.
But mostly it was just lights. We had no other appliances that I recall.
So because your father rigged this up, it wasn't that big a deal for you getting rural electricity?
No.
Okay. Going back to the WCTU,
You?
they had meetings and was a general idea to try to keep alcohol consumption from being a problem in the home and what have you?
I would say so. I never went to one of the meetings, and so I never. I just know
did your
they
mother?
were against drinking, and that was all I knew about it.
Was your mother in the
Oh,
organization?
yes, I think she went to the meetings, but as far as having any connection with kids, just didn't go to those meetings.
I see. Were they at night or in the afternoons or?
I really wouldn't know when they had their meetings.
Oh no, okay. Well, tell me about when you were, say in 1925, when you were about 7, was there one store in Reed Corners or 2?
Oh, there was one. Mhm.
Did the Winnies run it?
No.
No?
I don't know who won it, but I don't recall the Winnies ever, running a store. I remember somebody by the name of Ralph Quayle. I remember he ran the store, and the Brands
Okay, that's right.
run the store for several years.
Was the store the second building or the third building from the corner?
I guess it was the second.
Okay.
Mhm. Yes.
You had a house right on the corner in the mid-20s. Do you remember who lived there?
Mamie Miles used to live there. There was a Hannah Mosher, but I think she lived down near Juanita Bailey somewhere.
Okay, so the first place was Mamie Miles when you were in the mid-20s. The next one was the store run by this Ralph Quayle.
Mhm.
Do you remember anybody? And then the Brams were in there too?
Mhm.
Who had it first, you know? Bram or Quayle?
I would say probably Ralph Quayle.
Okay. Was there a gas pump there?
I don't recall about that.
Okay. The third building there, was that a one-story building like now, or was it a big building?
I don't even recall there being a building there.
Okay. Over the vacant lot across from Mamie Miles's, was there still a building there that used to be a hotel? The Reed Corners
Oh,
Hotel
yeah,
used to
yes.
be there. Do you remember?
Lonnie Powell was the only one I remember that lived in the old hotel. There was another man too, and I can't recall his name. But Lonnie Powell, he used to live there for quite a few years. And Lonnie was quite a stutterer, and everybody, felt he was a very nice fellow. And everybody felt sorry for him. And I remember we would invite him for special occasion dinners that we had, and would always have him come.
Now you say Lonnie Powell, was he related to George Powell and Ethel and Carson and?
I never heard.
Okay. Was he a hired hand, or how did he make his living?
I suppose he was. I suppose he was a hired hand. All I know is he wanted to be buried in Reed Corners Cemetery. He didn't want to be buried in the county home cemetery. Not over there, he said, where the woodchucks were. I want to be buried over there.
So your family kind of took him in then and was friendly with him?
Well, occasionally we'd ask him to dinner or something like that. Mhm.
So he was an older man when he lived at the old hotel?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Do you know who would have owned the hotel then when these couple of guys were living there?
Mhm.
Was it a 2-story building, or did it look more like a house by then?
No, it was 2-story.
2-story.
Mhm.
Was it pretty fallen down looking?
Well, it always looked to me as though it always needed a coat of paint as far as that goes. And of course, before that, I have no recall. It was a stagecoach stop.
Mm-hmm.
We had heard that at one time, that it was.
Did you ever hear about the house where that Mrs. Wood lived at the corner of Lake to Lake and 247 being a stagecoach stop?
No, I never happened to hear that. Mhm.
I don't know if it's true or not, I heard that. Do you remember a house on the corner across from Mamie Miles? Actually across from where the hotel was? You ever remember a house there?
Just the old hotel. That's
Okay,
all
there was no house on the opposite corner from that? At the corner of County
The
Road 18?
Grange, I mean, the Grange.
No, no, the other corner.
Mhm.
From the parsonage back down toward Reed Corners.
Oh.
Do you remember a house there?
I remember where the Sampsons used to live. That was up that road near the evaporator, just beyond that.
Is that where Marge and Tom Henry lived?
Yes. Mhm.
Was there a house across from the evaporator?
Not that I know
Okay, all right. Do you remember when they found some natural gas, or the boys would play,
of.
light a little flame?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Tell me about that.
All I remember is the pipe was there, and we heard that several people would throw a match in just to see the fire come up. And that's all I know about the old gas well.
Was that in the creek near
It
the
was right
cemetery?
next to the creek.
Next to the creek?
Mhm.
Did Herb or somebody cover that up?
That I don't know.
Do you ever remember Reed Corners having a baseball team?
No, I don't remember that.
Don't remember Reed Corners having a baseball team? How about, I remember Dorothy Sport telling me that she used to be afraid of the gypsies.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about where they would set up and what they would do. And
All I know is we were afraid of the gypsies, and we had a sweet cherry tree along the side of the road, and when they would come along, they would just strip the branches off from that tree and eat all the cherries they could from that cherry tree, and that's about all I remember about gypsies.
do you remember where they used to set up in Reed's Corners?
Never heard.
Okay. You remember, like in the 30s, they found some Indian skeletons in back of the parsonage? Do you remember hearing about that?
Yes, I think I remember hearing about it, but I never heard any of the details or whatever was done about it.
Okay. Tell me more about what you remember of the store.
Well, it was, we kids in school thought it was pretty nice, and once in a while there would be somebody in our class that would take us down for a treat. And so we each would get a piece of candy.
When
And
you
then
say,
come to find out, the girl had charged the candy to her parents. So I guess that came to a halt
I
pretty
bet
quick.
the girl was trying to get kids to like her?
It could have been.
Uh-huh. So it was Quail or Bram that had the store. When you walked into the store, was the counter in front of you or to the left or the right?
To the left. It was
Counters
all
to left.
glassed in with all the candy underneath, of course.
Penny candy.
Mhm.
What stuff did, your dad was Grover, right?
Mhm.
What stuff did Grover and Idabel buy at this store in the late 20s?
Well, outside of bread, I don't know, but then I know we made most of our bread in those days.
Did your mom buy fabric there or
No.
flour? Or?
Buy, fabric in Canandaigua, and we used to take our butter and cream into Canandaigua. And then we would do our grocery shopping with the butter and cream and eggs money also, egg
Mhm.
money. And so somebody by the name of Whitaker used to have a place where the Star Dry Cleaner is now, about in that area. He used to sell eggs, and you'd always take your eggs there and sell them to him.
So you bought some bread in Reed's Corners. Did you buy anything else that you can remember much?
Not much.
You did most of your trading in Canandaigua.
Mhm.
Better variety or cheaper prices or both?
Well, partly because we were going and we wanted to get rid of the eggs and the cream, and that would be another incentive for going into.
Did you sell eggs down here at Reed's Corners?
Not that I know of, no.
If you were buying like boots or rubbers or pitchforks, where would you buy that stuff?
Right in Canandaigua. Mhm.
Okay.
They
Did-
had Also, if you wanted to, leave your horse and buggy, there was a place in Canandaigua, like a big barn almost, and you could drive your horse and buggy in there and hitch it up and, leave it there while you went on the trolley to Rochester.
Oh, really? Did you ever take the train from Canandaigua?
A few times.
To where?
Mostly the trolley, to Rochester. I don't know where yes, I guess the trolley went to Rochester.
For shopping or to visit older
Oh,
relatives?
Doctors, I always had doctor's appointment in Rochester.
Oh, not in Canandaigua?
No.
Huh.
Well, I had a special, something called acidosis, I guess, and I don't know now what they call it, but evidently,
So you had to see a
eating
specialist.
problem.
Oh,
Evidently, eating coarse things would make me sick for a few days.
oh, okay. So you had to go see a specialist, huh?
Mhm.
You did your 8 years out here at country school,
Mhm.
and then did you go on after that?
Yes, we went into Canandaigua to school, and parents took turns driving,
Okay.
and so.
So you didn't board with somebody
Oh,
in
no.
Canandaigua?
No, we went by car and sometimes, let's see, the Gages would take turns and we would, and the Turners, and.
Was this Leon Turner's,
Lynn Turners, Elizabeth and Esther, and Elmer. And so, anyway, by families taking turns, why we would get to high school that way.
did you feel that the city kids treated you as equals, or did they kind of look down their nose at the country kids?
Well, I think that they were mostly cliques.
Okay.
I suppose they'd all been to the union school together and like that, and they stuck together in high school, and I suppose maybe we country kids were maybe not of their caliber, maybe, I don't know.
Now, now the school was on Main Street. It's now senior citizen apartments, isn't it? Isn't that where you went to school?
The Canandaigua Academy we went to all the time.
Okay, up on North Main Street,
Mhm.
on the right-hand side going north. In your school there, the city kids as opposed to the county kids, or the country kids, would there have been like 2/3 of them city kids and 1/3 country kids, or how would it have shook out as far as what the numbers were?
I would think so, probably. I imagine the city kids overwhelmed us, of course.
Okay, but there would be kids coming in from Cheshire and Centerfield and,
Yes, mhm.
and up north of Canandaigua and Chapin.
Yeah, houses and just,
Who's your
Alma and Arlene both went to, Alma went to Canandaigua to school.
Elma White?
Mhm.
Who was your best friend that you met in Canandaigua?
Oh, I don't know, just whoever we sat with that year, I guess.
Okay. Did you find the courses harder than they were at country school?
I think some of them were and some of them weren't.
Okay.
Just like geometry was a little harder, but I got so I liked it real well. Different, and I liked the history and different subjects that we had pretty well.
Let's switch gears for a second. Were the Rhodes involved with the Grange fairly actively?
Not terribly. Any program I remember, quite often my father would be asked to sing, and there was a special quartet of my father